Welcome, people, to the Obstacle Races New Zealand podcast. So we're back. We've taken a break over Christmas and getting back into the swing of things, trying to remember where we were up to in the podcast, because we have today's episode, our interview, we recorded it pre-Christmas, and we have a few more sitting in the bag as well, recorded before Christmas. So they're exciting, but yeah, we're trying to remember where we're at. Yeah, how have you been over Christmas, Stephen?
Pretty good, Max. Welcome to 2022. Not the way I thought the year was going to start, like
No.
going in a semi-lockdown and having a whole heap of events cancelled. But no, I've had a real good Christmas break. Me and my wife took a bit of time off and had a bit of a tour around the countryside. Did a bit around the Coromandel and went up north for a little while and very relaxed. But now back into the work. What do you call it? Did one event over Christmas. I did the goat, which was another hard slog, but had a real relaxing time.
Not really.
You and your family?
Yeah, pretty good time. I just changed jobs. I was going to start my new job. I forget the date. Start of the new year, and then my previous job, I'd already asked for time off since before Christmas, have the whole Christmas, New Year's off. So when I switched jobs, I just took all that time off still anyway. So I had a big gap in between, was quite nice. Big gap of doing nothing was good. And yeah, been good with kids, and COVID sort of ruins things. Usually we have a family gathering, extended family each Christmas, but didn't do it this year due to COVID, which is a bit unfortunate. And yeah, my new job's going good. It's a bit hard. It's a bit less. It's still sort of physical. I'm still walking around, but probably half my days on the road, driving in a car. So I'm a bit less active than my previous job. Means I have to make up for that somewhere to retain my fitness. Try and do some more running somewhere. Haven't figured out how to put that in yet. But
I see you did a good run the other day up around. The photos on Strava looked real good. You're up around some hills somewhere. Yeah,
because I was booked in to do a race, actually. It just got cancelled as well. It was the Wellington Xterra Festival, but we'd already booked accommodation, so we decided to go away for the weekend anyway. And it's just outside of Wellington. It's like an hour outside of Wellington, but rather than driving up that morning for the race, we decided to stay the weekend with the kids. So we went up anyway, had a holiday, and there's another run up there, the escarpment track, which runs, there's the coastal road, and you go up the steep hill and the tracks along the hill. It's been on my bucket list for years to run it. Finally got around to it, and it's awesome. It's amazing views. It's really exposed, not much vegetation, and big stair sections at points, and it's pretty crazy. It's not handrailed actually.
Yes, it certainly looked like some of the photos you posted it looked spectacular. But that swing bridge and suspension area and the stairs certainly looks like a well set up track, that's for sure. It's
a good one, yeah. Really popular as well. Past lots of people doing it. Looks like a good track. And it goes from one train station, it's about 9k, but one direction. So I ran it and then ran it back. But I realized it starts at a train station, ends at another train station, which I probably could have looked up beforehand, but I didn't realize it. So you could easily walk it and then just take the train back to where you parked your car.
Yeah, okay. Yes. Well, what else has been happening in the world of OCR that we want to bring up now? There's hundreds of different things, lots of events being cancelled and lots of things happening around, but I think we'll save them to a later episode and spend a bit more time delving into that.
Yeah, quite a bit's been happening, quite a bit of news for us to talk about actually. But yeah, we'll try and keep it brief today because our interview today is fairly long, so we'll bring up the news in future episodes. Yes. But I did want to bring up that recently we just released our 10th episode. Last episode was number 10, so we made it into double digits, which is awesome.
It is.
And when I posted that, I realized that we were up to 400 and something listens overall. We were coming up to 500, so I started putting out some social media posts, trying to encourage people to share it, to see if we could reach 2 milestones at once, if we could reach 500 listens and 10 episodes released. And we made it. So in between last episode being released and this one, we've surpassed the 500 listens, total listens goal, which is awesome. So thank you everyone who's given us a listen. Just keep listening, keep subscribing, keep sharing it around. And quite surprising for me looking at our stats, I don't have them pulled up here, but most of our listeners were in New Zealand. But we also had a lot of listeners overseas as well, which surprised me considering our content is New Zealand based. But we had a lot of listeners in North America, which was pretty cool.
We've got more listeners in North America than we have in Australia. And Germany and the UK aren't far behind either. I've got it open here.
Oh, right.
The Czech Republic and Ghana and Canada.
Yeah, it's surprising. It's awesome. Like, I guess people, because all our content's New Zealand, we talk about New Zealand races, New Zealand people involved in obstacle sports. So I guess it's either Kiwis overseas or it's people wanting to learn about what's happening in New Zealand.
I think we need to get more female audiences. We need to work out how to do that. We've got 80% male and 20% female. And but a good mix of ages from 18 to even 1% are over 60. To my parents. But no, it is good. We've got 45 regular listeners, which is good. I've listened to all episodes, so that certainly helps.
Yeah, that's encouraging to see.
Yes.
Encourages us to keep going, and
keep going.
Especially since we just started the podcast, it's cool to see it spreading and some traction out there.
Yep. See if we get mentioned at the podcast awards later in the year in New Zealand this year. Now that we've been going for, well, we will be going for a year by the time we get back to that again later in the year.
Yeah. Yep. We've got to improve our quality, try and get in there next year. Oh, that reminds me. Yeah, we could shout out to Matt B. Davis of Obstacle Racing Media. So he sent me a message recently online asking me to send the link to the podcast so he could share it via his network. I sent him the link and he was like, "Oh, I've already shared this," which he had. He shared our podcast previously. Then he said, share it again, which is awesome. Yeah, so I've been listening to Obstacle Racing Media for years, a good 5+ years. So it's awesome that we're getting some attention from overseas, from America, and it's cool to network with him. And cheers Matt B. Davis for paying attention to us and helping us grow our audience as well. And if anyone hasn't checked out that Obstacle Racing Media, it's awesome. It's the most prolific podcast on obstacle racing out there. Definitely give that a listen.
Yes, I've been listening to Matt for a fair while as well, along with a few others. But yes, he certainly has got the biggest range and the most up-to-date information on obstacle racing and anything Spartan. All right, well, shall we cut over and listen to our guest, Matt? Listen right to the end. He's a golfer and he's got some very funny stories. He's got a very interesting life. His job is quiz master at a pub. So, but no, hope you enjoy. It is really funny. We really enjoyed talking to him, and we'll have to get him back on at a later stage.
Yeah, some amazing stories. Yeah, an OCR legend, mini golf legend, and pub quiz legend. Just all-round legend, I guess. Yes. Matt Ansley. It's very entertaining episode, and I think he's been away. I think he said he was away from OCR and running events for a while, but he's getting back into them, he said, which is exciting. Hopefully see him at some races coming up.
Hello everyone, thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. We've heard some, been told we're going to get some interesting tales and get down some rabbit holes that we probably don't want to go, but let's...
Who told you that?
See where we go. A few of your buddies got told to stay away from golf until the end. Otherwise,
okay.
we talk about is golf. But
yeah, that's cool.
Do you want to start by giving us a bit of a rundown? Where you're from, how you got here, where you are? Sort of let the listeners know a little bit about Matt.
Yeah, for sure. So currently living in Auckland. Been here since 2005. So not an Aucklander, just someone who lives in Auckland. And I currently work for Believe It or Not quiz events. We do pub quiz events around New Zealand. Currently in lockdown, which is not good for business. And so I host here in Auckland. I host 3 pubs each week, as well as the team who creates and does all the research, blah blah blah. That's a day job, and then the night job is hosting, which is a lot of fun, a lot of people, and so I've gone from not a lot of spare time to too much spare time here in lockdown. Currently 37. So you want an obstacle race? My first obstacle race.
Just anything about you, where you grew up, what school?
Oh, right. Okay.
Just history pre-OCR.
So born and bred in Wanganui, New Zealand, and lived there for all my schooling, and then went to the UK for a year on a gap year tutorship type thing in Salisbury, England, which was epic. And came back and lived in Wanganui for 2 years. Just worked and played every sport I could in that 2-year period, and then moved to Auckland in 2005 and worked a few jobs, and then ended up in my current job in 2008. So I've been 13 years with the quiz company.
Okay. And sports, what sort of sports were you into?
Oh, growing up, played everything. Cricket, soccer, or football for our English friends. Volleyball. Took up golf at 13 in my high school years, and played quite a lot of that and did okay. Played a bit of rugby at the end of high school, and golf and volleyball were my main sports. Soccer, I should have kept playing soccer, but I gave that up to take up golf, and that's one regret I have. I should have played more team sports in high school, put it that way, rather than golf with old men and an individual sport. So yeah, but that's still enjoyed the golf years for sure.
And then you got into OCR.
Yeah.
Were you into running or anything like that before, or was that just?
I had done. I had played here in Auckland. I hadn't really played a sport until 2008, and I played rugby for 8 seasons at College Rifles in Remuera, and OCR. I was doing a boot camp in the Domain in 2012, and one of the guys, Dan Organ, who's actually done some OCR himself, he mentioned a mate overseas had done a Tough Mudder, and before that I had done maybe 2 half marathons and maybe 2 marathons just here in Auckland, and wasn't really my cup of tea. I enjoyed it, but just I got bored basically. And then so I hadn't really done any events, so to speak. Yeah, so that was up until 2012, and then once I started OCR, that changed my life pretty quickly for what I did with my spare time and the number of events I've done.
So what events have you done? Because I know you did a lot of Tough Mudder and World's Toughest Mudder.
Yeah. So Dan mentioned that Tough Mudder in 2012, and I went and researched it. Basically, that I don't think I did any work that day, and just Googled Tough Mudder, and like the promo video was epic, and I found out that they had a few races, events in Aussie, and so did the first one in 2013, April 2013, just outside of Sydney. So that was the first event I did. And then my last event was 2018. And in between that, I've got a list. I did some research on my numbers. Nice. So between April 2013 and May 2018, I managed to finish 33 laps of normal Tough Mudder events. That's in Aussie, and New Zealand had it 14, 17, and 2014, 17, and 18. I did one Tougher Mudder in Whistler, Canada in 2017, which is just basically a 10-mile race, so 16K race, 1 lap. 2 Toughest Mudders, which is 8-hour racing, as many laps as you can do in 8 hours, starting at midnight and finishing at 8 a.m. So one was in Whistler as well on that trip in Canada, and the second one, which was my last race, was sort of Queensland, South Queensland, in May 2018, and also 4 World's Toughest Mudders, which is the 24-hour race. So they were 4 years in Las Vegas, or just outside of Vegas, and that was 2014 through to 2017. And Spartan wise, I've done 4 sprints, 3 supers, 1 beast, and 6 ultra beasts. That's an Aussie and 1 trip to the States. To Hawaii. Which was
wow.
Yeah.
Didn't realize you'd done so many.
Yeah.
It's
I got a bit addicted in that 6-year stretch.
Oh, that's cool. Is there something about the ultra events that draws you in? I mean, with the Spartan Ultra and the Tough Mudder, the longer distances, do you prefer that over the short distances?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I'm not really suited to either. I'm not like, some people are good at short distances, some people are good at long distances. I'm not really good at either. So not good, but I don't stand out at one or the other. But I kind of figured, especially if you're going away, you want to do a decent race. You don't want to do a race that's over and done with in an hour or two. If you've flown to Aussie or the States, and then even just getting to some of these events, it's like an hour or two travel because they're usually in obscure places. So I feel like you got to do a decent amount of time just to make it worthwhile, in my opinion. And yeah, and it's actually, and just training for the events as well was good because it made you have to train. You like some of the shorter distances you could probably wing just over general training, but any longer training you need to actually have a plan. Well, ideally, have a plan and train for it as well.
Yeah, you mentioned traveling to the events. Just thinking about that, how were you traveling so much? Was it just vacations and holidays, or were you like doing the race and then doing other stuff around it as well?
Yeah, good question. The first 2013, I did the Sydney race, so that was a week's holiday. Oh, sorry, that was about 5 days because my sister lives in Sydney, so I spent time catching up with her. And then Melbourne and Sydney. Yeah, so I actually had a bit of leave that I used up in 2013. 2014, I actually went. That was my first year doing World's Toughest, and had a few changes at work, and I actually went back to 4-day working week, so 3-day weekends each week, which meant I could basically do a 4-day trip and only have to take 1 day annual leave, which was 4 days is plenty, especially to Aussie, is plenty enough time to get a decent trip in. Yeah, so a lot of people have actually asked me that, like, how do you manage it all? And it's like, or sometimes in the first year anyway, 2014, I had a deal with work with my manager that, so say if I had to take a Monday off, I would work extra before going away. So I didn't actually have to take leave. I didn't do that too often, but enough to be able to do these trips. And so it wasn't like anything, just I had to earn all that time off basically. So yeah.
And getting on a plane after doing an ultra must have been fun, and flying back here, because I've flown to Melbourne and the Sunshine Coast and done supers and sprint.
Yeah.
And just going over on the Thursday night, having the Friday, doing it Saturday, and then getting on a plane and come back here Sunday, and that's bad enough. But doing an ultra and getting on a plane, especially folding yourself into some of those small seats.
Yeah. It's one of those things that you learn, like you just get used to. So you have to stretch basically after the race if you've got the flight the next day. That is, you just all these little things you kind of learn because you get off the flight and you are as stiff as anything because you just folded yourself, like you say, folded yourself up. I haven't had any too like embarrassing moments where my legs stop working or I can't get off the plane. But yeah, even flights were fun because you normally share a story with someone if they. I never initiate conversation, but if someone asked what I was up to, I'd normally tell them. And OCR is still, well, maybe not so much now, but definitely when I started 2013, 14, not many people knew about it. So it was pretty easy conversation to kick off.
And you said you've done several ultras in Australia. So just for our listeners who probably haven't had any here in New Zealand, how long is the average ultra, and what's the sort of mix of obstacles? Are they similar to sprint, or super, but just spread out a lot further, or?
So I've done 5 ultras. So yeah, they call them Ultra Beasts, which is, I think Spartan defines it as at least 42 Ks. I think we did one year that was close to 50. So they don't actually tell you the distance. They just say it's an ultra. You have to be prepared basically. Like, I think, because I mean, not too many people keep track of the actual distance. They just do what the course is to do. So all the ultras are 2 laps. So it's not just one 42 loop track like, say, a standard marathon running event. It's just 2 loops of 121. Oh, sorry, whatever the distance is.
Around.
And you normally if you say 21 k's, you're looking at about 30 obstacles, 30 to 35, I'd say. And when we say obstacles, some could be as simple as just a beam that you have to roll over or climb over. And then, of course, the much tougher ones like a monkey bar, 3 kind of phase monkey bar type thing. And there's always, if people listening have never done a Spartan race, the spear throw is like that's iconic signature obstacle, which most people hate because it's not really any like you can't really train for it. I mean, you can, but not like you can for the other obstacles. I had about a 50% success rate on the spear throw, which made people around me hate me a lot. But it was all good.
Yeah, I was wanting to ask you about World's Toughest Mudder, because we had Liam Wilkinson.
Yeah.
Talked to him a little bit about it, but probably didn't get too in depth with him about all that goes on with World's Toughest and the. I've just been listening to some other obstacle racing podcasts from the States, and they talk to some of the participants, and it's fascinating just hearing about the thought process that goes in behind, like the pit crews and when you'll stop and do you wear a wetsuit and changing shoes and all these sort of things. Yeah, I don't think I'll ever run that far myself, but it's fascinating hearing people talk about it. Yeah, so did you ever like any sort of tactic around when you'd stop and take breaks and what your fuel and what nutrition, that sort of stuff?
I mean, yeah, I could talk about World's Toughest for ages. So yeah, my first time was 2014. And should I just talk about like the background of getting into the World's Toughest?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So when I did that first Tough Mudder in 2013, the MC kept talking about a World's Toughest Mudder, which I think a few of the Aussies who were there that day had competed in. And I finished the Tough Mudder and I was like, man, this is cool. And then obviously the idea of a challenge to do it for 24 hours appealed to me. And I actually entered, so that was April. I actually entered for the 2013 World's Toughest Mudder, which was due to be in November, and started to train for it. But then the more I researched into like logistics and needing a pit crew, and it was all the way in the States and the cost and time, I backed out. I freaked out basically. But luckily they let me transfer the entry fee that I already paid to the next year, 2014. And in the meantime, my good mate Sayon I always pronounce his surname wrong. He's going to kill me when he hears this. Sivanan-san. Oh, I need to remember how to say that. He was doing the same boot camp that I had done when I'd first heard about it, and he had followed sort of progress of a few of my events. And out of the blue, he signed up for the event as well. So there's 2 of us, and we did a bit of training together. But it's kind of one of those funny things. Like, it's hard to train for something like that. It's such an individual thing. It's hard. It's probably better to train by yourself majority of the time, with a few group sessions now and then. But there's a World's Toughest Mudder Facebook group, which still exists, and this year's race is due to go next weekend or the weekend after. So that is getting posts on it left, right, and center right now. But an American guy who was kind of by the name of Ken Jacobus, he was like one of the founders of the community. And I made a comment on some Facebook post back in 2013 or 14, just saying, I'm coming from New Zealand for this race. Can't wait, something like that. And he private messaged me and got in touch and just said, hey, add yourself to this group. And there's a whole bunch of people with different advice and podcasts and advice you can look up. So I added myself to that and just researched all the posts from people who had done previous events. I didn't really worry too much about people who hadn't done the event because they hadn't been there and done that. And there was another guy, Aussie guy, Tim someone, who I only met once, but he had come top 10 in 2013. So he sent through some advice, and basically his advice was if you wanted to come top 10, and I was a bit like, time out, mate. I don't think I can quite do that just yet. But anyway, so we researched, did a whole bunch of research, and we were going in blind in 2014 to Las Vegas. It was the first 3 years for World's Toughest were 2011, 12, and 13, and it had been done in New Jersey. And apparently it was freezing the first 2 years, like just an epic did not fail percentage. And then 2013, it was like the perfect conditions, and they had the highest ever average mileage finishing per competitor. And then when they moved to Vegas, everyone was saying how warm it would be, and you probably don't need to wear a wetsuit, which most competitors had been doing in New Jersey, and people thought they could just run in minimum stuff. But Say and I decided to take everything that was recommended, and that was 2014. So I'm getting to your question eventually. So we went into the whole thing blind. We had not completely blind, but you just basically had to do all your research beforehand. And we got over there, and it was like, it was so, I don't know if you've been to Vegas, but it's like November. It was like 25 degrees plus during the day. And then the sun went down at 5 p.m., like super fast, the sun goes down. And it gets very cold because it's kind of desert type. And we were staying at the hotel near the event, and we slowly, we were there for a whole week beforehand. I just assumed being there a whole week beforehand would be great for acclimatizing and jet lag, etc. And then through the week, more and more people started arriving, and so the buzz started to arrive. And you met people from all over the world. I remember a guy from the UK. I can't remember his name. Jimmy was one guy and his mate, and they were just mad people who were just like, yeah, we're just going to run the whole time. And I was like, that was their plan. Yeah, we're just going to run the whole time. And so it was pretty intimidating. Like you turn up with all these people who are like uber athletes. Like nothing like I'd ever done myself. And you feel intimidated because you feel like you shouldn't be here or you shouldn't be there. And you just got to have confidence in yourself that you're going to do well. And you talk to people beforehand, and they're going, yeah, I've got this piece of gear, or I've been training like this, or I've got this nutrition. And you just feel like, man, I'm so far behind the standard. You don't know what to do. But anyway, the 2014, the race started, and it was like 25 degrees, and it was so hot. And they put you, I don't know how much you know about the race, but they ask you to go to the start line half an hour before, almost an hour before you actually start, and you kind of huddle into the start area, and they want everyone in there, but there's no shade, so you're in the blooming stinking hot sun for an hour before you're about to start a 24-hour race. It's like, man, this is stupid. So we managed to finally get going. And so I forgot what your question was, actually. All your questions. There's just so much I could tell you about it. That's all.
That's all right. That's what we want to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
fascinating.
So basically, for those listening, if you World's Toughest, it's an 8-kilometer lap that had the first year. I can't remember the exact number of obstacles. Maybe 20, between 20 and 25. So you had 24 hours to run or walk as many laps as possible. And so you run the lap, and then there's the pit area. So there's 1,200 people participating, and you all got an area where you set up a tent with everything you need: change of clothes, food. Well, they're the main things, actually. And if you've got pit crew, they just hang out in the pit area, like someone to assist you, basically. And they it's pretty boring for them because they have to just either watch or wait for you to come back before they do anything. And I had my dad and my best mate come over, which was perfect for the first year. And Say had his friend Andrea, and we set up tents next to each other, so we could be just one little hub, basically. And yeah, so you do the race. Obstacles, Spartan's kind of more like physically draining obstacles, and Tough Mudder's kind of like more fear factor type obstacles, like jumping off higher stuff or And they had a few obstacles at 2014 that no one had seen before. So World's Toughest is known for debuting obstacles that will be part of the Tough Mudder series the following year. So basically, because it's the World's Toughest, it's like you've got to learn to adapt to these new obstacles on the go. And I remember, what did we have? There was, I'll get there. There's a thing called Birth Canal, which wasn't that horrendous, but it was just frustrating. Basically, you had, I don't know, I can't remember how long it was, maybe 4 meters, 5 meters long, and you had to crawl on the ground, but above you was water just sagging. So basically, if you lay on the ground, it'd be touching your back, obviously. So you had to crawl under, but as you crawled, all the water pushed forward. So it got tighter and tighter the further you crawled along. So basically, hence the name Birth Canal, because by the time you end at the end, it's like popping a baby out during birth. But of course, this is in the desert, so all they had was like this kind of sheet on the ground, but it was just like gravel and stones on your front. So it was just uncomfortable. And yeah, so that was one of the new ones. So once again, not a like amazingly huge, brand new design, but just enough to be annoying.
Well, that one was, I did Tough Mudder in Auckland in 2018 maybe, and they had Birth Canal there.
Yeah.
Yeah, such a simple concept, like you were saying, you just crawl under this thing with water.
Yeah.
But that freaked me out. Like most of the other obstacles I was fine with, but that Birth Canal, I was starting to panic halfway through. Just the fact that it's water, like it just, because you move and then it lowers and surrounds all the available space.
Yeah.
So that was a good obstacle. That definitely got me, like played on my fear. And Tough Mud is awesome for that, having fear-based obstacles.
Yeah. And you can imagine, like, the first time through, second time through, third time through, it's like, yeah, no problem. And then come like 4 a.m., you've been going for like over 12 hours. Just the thought of lying down on the ground and having to squeeze through that was just like so frustrating. And like, it's all part of the mind thing. World's Toughest actually have probably half the obstacles are must complete. So you can't take a penalty or 30 burpees to get past. You actually have to finish it. They're the easier ones. And then probably the other half, if you don't complete the obstacle, you have a penalty loop, which could be anywhere from just an extra 400-meter run, walk, or carrying a cinder block up a hill and back down again. So the must complete obstacles, probably the toughest one was like just an A-frame structure and just flat surface on the side that you go up, but just with holes in the wall about shoulder width apart for most people, and just pegs. So it was too high to jump and reach the top. So you just had to take these pegs that were at the base and just like put them in the holes and just inch your way up the wall, and then you get to the top, and then you take the pegs out, throw them in this little like throw them in the hole, which goes back down to the start for the next person. So once again, first time through, second time through, third time through, pretty easy. But as your body drains and your muscles start giving up and you wonder what the heck you're doing, it gets harder and harder. One of the cool, like I say, the probably cool obstacles, I can't remember what it was called, but you climbed up to the structure, probably about 4 meters above water, on a platform, and it's all over water. You're going to go in the water no matter what. You have to jump out and catch a T-bar, and then that with your body, that weight, that then swings out, and there's a bell hanging out in front of you. And so you have to basically catch the T-bar, swing just before it gets to its peak, to its furthest point. You just have to let go with one hand, turn side on to the bell, reach out and hit the bell. And if you hit the bell, you complete the obstacle. And so as soon as you hit the bell, you just have to let go and just fall in the water, which is far. I've got some photos of me of the most ungraceful water entry you've ever seen. And if you miss the bell, then that's a penalty. So you have to, I think the penalty for that one was one of those 400-meter walk or extra distance. And then their signature obstacle for the World's Toughest was a 10-meter cliff jump. So They'd never done anything like that before, and once again, like it's all they had to do was build a structure to hold you, so not too difficult. But I don't know. I'd never jumped from 10 meters. I think the furthest I'd ever done, or highest I'd done, was 3 or 4. So this was like 2.5 times what I'd ever done, and that was the last obstacle for each lap. So you jump off the cliff, swim across the lake to the end, cargo net, climbing up the cargo net, and then the pit was maybe, I don't know, 500 meters away. So some of the obstacles didn't actually open until, the cliff wasn't actually open at night in the first year. So it was only open the daylight hours. So we started at 10 a.m. So from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then the next day on the Sunday from 6 a.m. till 10 a.m. when we finished. Yeah. So, yeah. So I had no real plan, to be honest. I just had a whole bunch of food. I had made peanut butter sandwiches. I had a whole bunch of like goo, energy gels. I can't remember the food I made. I just remember peanut butter sandwiches and goo. I'm sure there was more. I think maybe some cold pizza. I think I had some cold pizza. Yeah. But I don't know if you guys know about 2014. We actually had, it was known as the sandstorm year. So we started at 10 a.m. and probably.
I need to ask you about that. Yeah, I've heard stories about sandstorm coming through the Las Vegas desert.
Yeah.
Tell us about it if you were in the middle of it.
So basically, the event started 10 a.m. Saturday morning, but barely any wind, which was great because it's a desert. So there's, if the wind gets up, which it did, which I'm about to say, it's just a nightmare. So barely any wind, and then I can't remember the exact time, sometime after 10 p.m. that night. So it'd been going for 12 hours. Basically, according to the locals, a once in a 50-year storm came through. So just horrendously high winds. Apparently when it got close to 100 k's at times, gusts throughout the thing. So it's in the desert. So the sand, everything just got whipped up, and it was. I remember being on the lap when it started, and I was like, I couldn't believe this was happening. It was just like insane. And because the sand's getting whipped up, it goes straight into your eyes, and so your eyes were stinging like anything. And then you're running around, obviously, and so it was going into your throat as well, because you just couldn't. It was hard to keep. You couldn't keep your eyes closed. I remember at first when I was trying to deal with it, I remember kind of being bent over at the waist at like almost 90 degrees, trying to keep my face out of the sand, and which was very uncomfortable. So I didn't continue with that posture. So it started about 10 or 11. I can't remember the time, and it just didn't stop for the whole rest of the 12 hours. So for half the race, it was just nonstop. To be honest, probably eased towards the end, but it was still way more wind than you probably were expecting. Basically what happened though, because a lot of people had thought that you wouldn't need a wetsuit because the wind got up, everyone was so cold, those who hadn't packed a wetsuit actually started to drop out really quickly because they were just freezing. And it had gone, like I said, it was 25 degrees at the start, and with the wind chill, it was probably below zero during the night. And the guy who won World's Toughest the first 2 years, 2011-12, and came second in 2013, Junyun Park, his tent was like 50 meters away from our tents. And I remember he was like flying. He was absolutely flying, but he hadn't packed a wetsuit. And I remember coming back from one of the laps, going at probably half the pace he was going, and he had pulled out of the race at like midnight or 1 a.m. I can't remember the time. And when I got back to my tent from one lap, my dad and my mate told me he had pulled out, which actually gave me like a massive surge of confidence that I was still going when the top guy had, even though he was probably like 4 or 5 or 6 laps ahead of me at the time, and I was never going to get close to him. It just gave me this massive confidence. And people pulled out left, right, and center. And I remember afterwards, anyway, the officials said at one point, probably the peak of the storm, 1,200 people, there was only about 80 people on the course. So people either pulled out or they'd like just, because you can, after each lap, you can just spend as much time as you want in the pit area before starting another lap. Like, you don't have to continuously be going. If you've got an injury, or you need to get a whole bunch of food in you, or you need to warm up, you can take as long as you want. But obviously, that's less time to be out accumulating laps. But yeah, when they said there was only that many people on the course, it was like, I felt pretty cool that I was still going at that, even though it was slow and boring. Like, I definitely wasn't a top athlete. Yeah, so it's become known. If you ever get a chance, just YouTube 2014 World's Toughest Mudder, and it actually blew down some obstacles. That's how strong the wind was, which was great because we didn't have to do the obstacles. We just had to run, so that saved time as well. Yeah, so that was, like, at the time, you didn't even like comprehend how insane it was. It wasn't until we got back to the hotel, and the staff at the hotel had basically the hotel, big American hotel, all the deck chairs had flown away. All their umbrellas were like 2Ks down the road or in the neighbor's place and all that. And you just, because you're focused on your event, you don't even think about what this storm is doing to everyone else around the place. Yeah, man, it's good memories talking about it, to be honest. So the funny thing is, in 24 hours, Say was in the tent next to me. We didn't see each other once in 24 hours. Just our timing of our laps, we never came across each other. But our pit teams were keeping each other up to date with like how we both going, which was cool. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Just one last thing before the next question. Because people started pulling out, a lot of people had food prepared for the 24 hours. And because people started pulling out at about the halfway mark, 13, 14 hour mark, those that left who just were not going to come back, they had left all their food in the communal pit area. So my pit crew just went and just grabbed all this different stuff. Like, I just remember coming back to like this just plethora of food, hot soup, chicken, more chocolate than I've ever seen in my life. And people were just, because it was all, they just wanted to get out of there because they were so cold. I came back from one lap and Gareth and Dad were just like, so what would you like first? And that was a massive, that game, that got my spirits up real quick when I saw, knowing that I'd have an endless supply of food each lap. Like, that wasn't an issue anymore. So thank you to all those people who left food behind.
So it was the toughest or Spartan? Which would you prefer? Which is the better event?
Good question. The world's toughest is my favorite event. But if I had to compare the Spartan, like just a general Spartan to a general Tough Mudder, it's a good question because I enjoy them for different reasons. Tough Mudder is sort of more, I guess, you meet, it's probably more people focused for me. With Tough Mudder, just the people you do it with. And originally it was just something I did as my own interest. But as the years went on, you meet more people who are into this kind of stuff. So it becomes like a social weekend away. But the Spartan is probably more of a physical challenge. So that tests where you are physically. But just from my experience, you probably, although all the Spartans I did were usually with groups of people, or you traveled with them. You don't necessarily do the race with people because it's hard to, if you've got 4 people, you've all got different paces, or you all have different times when you're feeling good and feeling crap. So you do the traveling and the hotels together, but not necessarily the actual race. So I could be a politician because I diplomatically went around that question. So.
Fair enough comment too, because there is certain things, and the camaraderie and that is a big part of it, but the technicality of Spartan races is also a big thing that.
I like the Spartan fact that just the general races, so not the super, all the ones I've done. I like the 30 burpees if you can't do an obstacle, whereas Tough Mudder, it was like, give it a go. If you can't do it, carry on, which is great for people probably if you're doing it for the first time, or you're a bit intimidated, or you want to try something out. And then they both have their pros and cons. And I would happily do both of them. But yeah, if I had to choose a race, it would be the the world's toughest 24-hour race.
And you said you did Hawaii. You did a trifecta in Hawaii, or just?
No, so that was 2016, August 2016, and I went over an Aussie mate, a Kiwi mate who lives in Aussie, Nigel Mcintosh. We were both doing World's Toughest in 2016, so we did the Hurricane Heat on the Friday, in Hawaii, and then did the Ultra Beast on the Saturday. And there's one regret. I should have done the trifecta and finished it off on the Sunday, but I was But I also, when I decided to go Hawaii, I had two mates who were not into OCR at all. Were like, "Oh, we'll come to Hawaii as well and be a support crew." And I told them, "Well, you can't really. There's no really a support crew for this race." And they're like, "They just came to Hawaii anyway and had a party." So I was doing stuff with them after the Ultra Beast, but yeah, on the day of the Ultra Beast, we had to be up about 2:30 a.m. to get out to the race in time for the 6 a.m. start or 6:30 start. I can't remember. And I got up at 2, and my mates were coming home from their night out just as I was getting up to get ready. So different reasons, but yeah, Hawaii, that was intense. That wasn't just the obstacles. That was like the terrain was the biggest obstacle. And unfortunately, we caught a ride out to the race with another Aussie guy, and he took a wrong turn. So we were a bit late getting to the race, and we actually started about 10 minutes late. And then I don't know, I can't remember how many Ks in, but there was a single track up a slippery hill, and someone had gone out fast, but they were only wearing like running shoes, sneakers, and they basically held up hundreds of people on the single track because they were just slipping down the hill. And then all of a sudden, because the Ultra Beast started first, and then the first wave, the competitive wave of the Beast, just the one lap, were coming up behind, and there were some very angry people about why the chain of people weren't moving. And I didn't worry because I was doing Ultra Beast, and I had no set goal or anything for placing or time. But yeah, all of a sudden some of the top guys racing the Beast started bushwhacking through the thing just to get ahead of the stuff. So stuff like that you can't control. And I was very polite for the first 5 to 10 minutes, and then we all got frustrated and just started pushing our way through. So
you got any more OCR questions you'd like to throw at him, Max? Sorry.
Ooh, yeah, fascinating hearing about it. I can't think of anything specifically. Is any other aspects you want to talk about?
I've got a couple, but we're going to go off OCR. I want to find about, because he met one of my idols, the Dark Destroyer. I see photos on Facebook. So yeah. What was all that about? He was over here, or?
So Dark Destroyer, Sean Wallace from The Chase, the popular quiz show from the UK. So hang on, we are 2021. So he was on holiday in the Caribbean over Christmas, New Year, 2018, 2019. And from memory, he was either reading an article or just decided he wanted to go to New Zealand. So this is December, January over there. So he messaged his agent and said, "I want to go to New Zealand as soon as possible, get it sorted," basically. And anyway, so he went back to London, and then he was talking, I don't know who it was, but he was talking to someone in the UK who knew the founder of our quiz company that I work for. And he said, "Mate, if you're going to New Zealand, get in touch with this guy. He runs a quiz company in New Zealand," with obviously The Chase being a pub quiz type thing. So to cut a long story short, he got in touch with Brendan, and then so he came in February, and basically we had about a week or two, and we organised. He basically just wanted to see as much as New Zealand as possible. So not me as such, but Brendan organised kind of the main parts of New Zealand you should see if you've only got a week, and basically organised each night in different places around New Zealand at a pub that does our quiz. Just a chance. Sean was here to sort of promote his book that he just released. So he was trying to like sell copies and all that.
Yep.
And he so we organised pubs throughout New Zealand where you have basically like a Q&A and a chance to take on Sean, see if you can actually beat him in a quiz thing. And plus during the day he'd go and be a tourist basically and go and do as much as he could. And then at night there'd be a pub thing, and and it was a huge success. He actually didn't know the chase was screened here in New Zealand. So when he arrived and so many people were like, "Oh wow, Sean Wallace, the Dark Destroyer," he was like, "Oh wow, you know who I am," type thing. Basically, wherever he went, people loved it. So that was February 2019, and he loved it so much he wanted to come back as soon as possible. And so each year we have a national pub quiz champs, which is our biggest event of the year, and you've just got lots of like crazy amounts of people trying to be the smartest people, basically who's the smartest. And so he said he'll come back and host that night for us, be the host, be the MC, which was great. So we managed to make more room in the venue, and we had our biggest ever night we've had, purely because Sean Wallace was the MC. But he came out for, I think it was maybe 2 weeks or close to 2 weeks, and kind of did the same thing that he'd done in February, go around the country, do all these different events. He was, because February was so successful, when people heard he was coming back, they all wanted him to be part of an event that they were hosting or whatever. And I remember it was a Friday night, it was a charity quiz here in Auckland, and we were helping it, and Sean was like a special guest. He wasn't emceeing, he was just around. I think he just did like one round, like 15 minutes. And at the end of the night, so because it was a charity night, there was also a few Kiwi sports stars who were there to promote the night, whatever. And in the break, they said, so now's a chance if you want to talk to Sean or the Kiwi sports stars and go and get signatures or whatever. And in the break, the Kiwi sports stars were standing at a round table just talking to each other. I think they may have got like a few people every now and then go up and say, "Hey, can I have a picture?" or whatever. And Sean had a queue like 100 people long the whole time, and it was just amazing to see, like, most Kiwi sports stars I mean, they were retired, but still, but Sean was just like in such hot demand. And he was obviously and so that was 2019, and he was planning to come back last year, and then COVID hit, and just like everyone around the world, all your plans go out the window. So
I have to admit, I didn't realise that the chase was such a big thing here in New Zealand. Especially my in-laws. You go down to the rest home, and then they've all got to be home by 5 o'clock. They're chases.
I have people who come to my quiz nights. They're like, I think some of them watch it delayed, so they always turn up late because they're watching the chase. Right. So, like a few minutes late. But yeah, it just shows. And I had so many friends contacting me, especially when I posted on Facebook a photo with him, and people, "Hey, is there a chance to meet Sean? And can he come to our pub?" And and I was like, "Well, sorry, there's already a schedule in place."
All right, and we've had Liam on before, and we got Scotty on Thursday. And, they both told me not to get you involved in golf early, otherwise that's all we would talk about. So I suppose we've got to brush on this, and because this is new to me and Max, we're not sure about your golfing prowess. So,
okay. So in 2017, I was my summer holidays. I came back, and my parents had seen a flyer advertising the first ever New Zealand Minigolf Open to be held at Lilliput on Tamaki Drive here in Auckland. Minigolf was something like probably a lot of families you've done over the years, just to something fun if you're on holiday or just every now and then. And my dad and I played a lot of normal or growing up golf, as I call it, back in the day, and we're both very competitive against each other. So we decided to enter the first ever New Zealand Minigolf Open, and we didn't actually do too well. But from then, they started a series of events like once a month at different mini golf courses, mainly in Auckland and like Waikato and Bay of Plenty. And so we started playing those, and that's kind of progressed into, so that was 2017, so 4 years ago. And to cut a long story short, played a bunch of events. Currently, I'm the president of the New Zealand Minigolf Federation. Yeah, got to organise events. You don't actually have to do too much, to be honest. We were due to have the New Zealand Minigolf Open this year in a few weeks, but that's been postponed to March next year. All going to plan. But yeah, so 2018 went over to Czech Republic for the World Adventure Golf Masters, which is there's basic. It's so hard to explain because it's such a foreign concept, but there's basically 2 world championships for mini golf, and there's the version. It's massive in Europe. People, you just got no idea. It's like people have played they have clubs, like they have courses that are not open to the public, like it's just for club members and stuff like that. And it's not like you get a putter and a ball from the shop. Like you have your own putter, specialized putter. They actually have rubber faces because the balls they use are not normal golf balls. They're kind of like squash balls. Some are made of glass. Some of them turn up to a tournament, right? So there's only 18 holes in the course. Some people turn up to a tournament with like 400 golf balls to choose from, and they carry it around in this bag and like this. So yeah, so for the big events, they'll spend a whole week preparing on the course, testing different balls to see which one works best on different holes. It's yeah, you got no idea what it's like. So that was 2018. I was just so far out of my depth. Like these people have been playing this format. I turned up with my normal putter and golf ball, and basically people laugh at you. So managed to get a special putter and just a few, like I think I had 3 or 4 of these special balls to use, and had like 3 or 4 days to adjust compared to these people who play it week in, week out for like decades. I remember actually the first day, it was so slow as well. Like so slow. It took like close to 12 hours to play 4 rounds of mini golf. Yeah, so you go from 24-hour adventure racing to mini golf. Yeah, 12 hours of 4. And so basically two most polar opposite sports you can go for. And so, but it felt like a waste of a trip because you traveled so far, all that time and money to do something you kind of can't really compete at, as opposed to World's Toughest, which you can. But then in 2019, there was another event, nothing to do with it's a putting competition. So it was just on a normal golf green. It was called Major Series of Putting. And so two Kiwi guys organized it, and the winning prize was a trip to Las Vegas to compete in the like international MSOP, Major Series of Putting. And I managed to win the Kiwi competition, the first ever New Zealand competition. And so we went back to Vegas. So after spending 4 years there for World's Toughest, got to go back in 2019 and compete. That was October 2019. Yeah. And managed to, it was like a week of events. So it wasn't just one event. And the event, I didn't have enough leave, and it was quite expensive to enter. So if I hadn't won the event, the New Zealand event, I wouldn't have gone over. And the event I did play in, I managed to get 6th out of, I think it was 80. I was second. It was so cool because there was like, they're trying to make it not golf, so they literally had a stereo playing the whole time when you're trying to putt. And they had a giant scoreboard as well, like live updating. So each group, you're in 2s, had a volunteer who was entering your score for each round, and your results would pop up on the big screen. And with the last round event I did well in, I think I just aced the putt on 9, and I was up to 2nd. And I was like, it was like the massive scoreboard, and I was like, far out, because it was kind of like what I was saying earlier with World's Toughest. You go in thinking, man, what the heck? I have no idea how I'm going to compare, if you know what I mean. Like if you're up to standard, and it was the same with the golf. And then when I was second, I was like, woo, wow. And it's actually like quite a lot of money involved. If I winning prize in that event was like 12 grand US. And I've never won any money doing OCR. So, and then I dropped one shot on the back nine, and it's just the standard was so good that other guys who were below me at that time played well on the last 9 holes and overtook me. I was 4 shots behind the lead, the winner in the end. But the guy who won the biggest event the year before, I managed to beat him. And the guy I tied with for 6th, he actually made the cut at this year's US Open, Golf US Open, the big one of the 4 majors. So
4 majors, yes.
Yeah, so that was
we're mixing with the big boys.
that was the when I was young, you dream, when you're playing golf, you dream of being like a pro golfer and being on TV and stuff. Like that was the closest I'll ever get. And but again, so that was 2019, and the plan was to do. There was going to be 3 New Zealand events last year, and my ultimate plan was to hopefully tie in a big US trip and do the putting competition, then stay in the States for the world's toughest for one more race. And that was on my radar for either last year or this year, and that all went out the window pretty quick. So, and the putting event's actually folded now, which is a massive shame. Oh. So yeah,
so you won't be getting back for that then.
yeah. So I was, it's just another thing that's it folded pretty quick actually. So COVID really killed it. I think it was struggling anyway, and then COVID just killed it off completely. But
so you're still thinking of going back for one more go at World Toughest?
Yeah, I did 4 in a row, and I always had 5 in my mind for some reason. So, I had written a whole bunch of notes about everything. So I'll quickly see if I can. But basically, 2014 was the first year, and I remember my pit crew were keeping track of my position as we went around, and you could actually sort the results by country. And so they sorted by New Zealand just to narrow it down to say and I, rather than trying to scroll through. And we found out there was another Kiwi competing who we had no idea about, and his name is Abraham Dyer, or Abe, or most people call him Chief. He runs 808 House of Training on the shore here in Auckland. Anyways, after the race, I looked him up and got in contact, and we both did the race and then shared stories, and then we did a few races together in 2015. So Abe and I did World's Toughest all the 4 years together. And then in 2015, a guy, Mark Brunton, who was a member at Abe's gym, decided to do World's Toughest in 2015. So Mark and his wife, Eileen, 2 of the most encouraging people, supportive people you ever meet. So that was 2015. 2016, we had 10 Kiwis take part. So myself, Abe, Mark, Say came back for his 2nd year. Liam, who obviously you chatted to. Scotty Thornton, who hang on, how did it go? A guy I played rugby with was a friend of Scotty's, and Scotty had been talking about World's Toughest, and our mutual friend Brett said, the guy I play rugby with has done it a few times. I should put you in contact. Scotty messages me out of the blue. That week, we're literally due to do an exterior run out at Riverhead. Scotty introduces himself. That was like May 2016. And then by November 2016, we're going to Vegas together. So Scotty was there. Andrew Robinson, who I met on the start line of the 2014 Auckland Tough Mudder. I'd done a few. He had a headband on. He was full of energy and full of chat, and we ran that together. And then we stayed in contact, and then he saw me doing World's Toughest, and he wanted to do it. So he ended up doing it in 2016. Nigel Mcintosh, who I mentioned earlier, is a Kiwi living in Melbourne, he did it. Nicola Reynolds, who was training at 808, she did it as well. And there was a guy called John Murphy, who, hang on, is this okay? Just to tell about the
carry
stories?
on, no worries.
Yeah. So I've got to get this right. He sold his farm in Taranaki, and 2016 was his year of doing as many cool things as possible. So a big group of us went over to a Spartan race in early September, and I was in line at customs arriving, and I had my World's Toughest Mudder shirt on from one of the years, and John had entered for 2016. Anyway, he just comes up behind me and said, "Hey mate, nice shirt." So we start chatting quickly, and he was there for the Spartan race as well. But I had done a rookie error and filled out my arrival form card in red pen, and it's supposed to be in blue or black pen. So the Aussie customs official said, "Oh mate, I need you to take you aside and redo your form." So our conversation got interrupted, and I kind of forgot about John because a few of us kept traveling together. And then must have been sometime after that race, he found me on Facebook somehow and said, "Oh, hey mate, nice to meet you. We chatted briefly at the airport. How did your race go?" And anyway, turns out he was doing World's Toughest. But he was over with his dad or his uncle, and they did the race together. So yeah, there was 10 of us in 2016, and then there was 7 of us in 2017. Let me get this right. Myself, Abe, Scotty came back, Andrew came back, Nicola came back. Say wasn't there because he was 16. And Tracy Roberts did it for the first time. Oh, and Say's cousin Guru, who lives in the States, he was pit crew in 2016, and he'd never really done anything like this, and he was so inspired by being there in 2016, he signed up for 2017. So yeah, we had a real tight community there back in the day. Oh, and then about 5 or 6 of them did 2018, but I didn't go that year, and neither did Abe. We were both getting a bit older and a bit more broken year by year. But kind of glad we didn't, because it was like freezing, not like a windstorm like 2014. They moved from Vegas to, I can't remember where it was, but so many people pulled out because it was just so cold. And so kind of dodged a bullet there. Would have been great to be there, but yeah, a lot of people didn't get close to their goals that year. But yeah, I do have, obviously next year is still unknown with international travel. So I've got my eyes tentatively on 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah, my last race was 2018, so there'll be a 5-year gap. Or 2018 was my last year in Aussie. I'm sure I'll try and do a few races before then if I decide to do.
Well, hopefully we're going to get some. They keep putting them all off.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm booked. I've got a weekend away booked before the Spartan, New Zealand Spartan next year. So unfortunately, I can't. Well, at the moment, I can't do Spartan next year. Maybe Ultimate Athlete. I'm not too sure.
I was just going to say, because you can wait a week later. Week later? Week later.
Yeah.
So have you done any other Kiwi ones like, Ultimate Athlete? Did you do Matt Monganui or Alpha Challenge or Warrior or any of those?
Oh yeah, good point. I haven't done Alpha event in Wanaka or Ultimate Athlete. I did the Wairua Warrior in 2016, and I actually, I wasn't in a good frame of mind in the start of 2016, and I enjoyed it. And the crew down there put a lot of effort. It was a real community event, and they had some very steep running hills as well. So the terrain was perfectly set up. And it was actually that event I realized how out of shape I was and how much work I needed to do to get back into shape. And then Scotty Thornton and I did the Madness here in Auckland, which ran for 2 years or 3.
Okay.
So we did that. I did it in 2015 with some mates from the gym I was at the time, in the 4-person team. And then Scotty and I managed to, he dragged me all the way and we managed to win the Madness in 2016. Yeah, although yeah, and that was our Cumu way. I remember because part of it was over private farmland. I remember we crossed this fence and we had to run down this dirt track. It was pretty uneven territory, and these cows that were like, felt like a mile away, just started charging us. And we literally had to I don't think I've ever run so fast in my life. Like we were running and downhill, but you're still having to watch your footing because the terrain was so uneven. And I remember looking back once, and it was like the cow, like literally just over my shoulder, charging at me. And the funny thing is, we actually, according to the timing, we only won by like 15 seconds or something. So we actually owe it to those cows for making us run fast to actually made us get that 15-second advantage. So yeah, and so yeah, they're the only local events I've done, New Zealand-based events. So it's a shame that I think the one down in Queenstown, the Mule, I don't know if that's still going. That was going for a few years. So
I think it might be. It might have been cancelled the past few years, but
yeah,
because the guy organised the Madness as well, the same person.
Yeah, correct.
I think it's contracted because they had a few events right around that. Must have been around that 2015, 2016 period.
Yeah.
I think they've contracted back to just the Mule. Yeah, I haven't seen too much about it recently. It might have been all postponed due to COVID now.
Yeah.
Hopefully it comes back. Yeah, I wanted to ask you though, just to tie OCR and your golfing, your mini golf together. Do you find any parallels between participating in them, or is it they are complete, distinct sports?
Physically, no, but just mentally, for sure. Yeah, like the physical training for a tough mudder. Like there's not too much physical training for putting. It's more like if you do like enough golf or putting events, you can do good shots at any stage, but actually doing them when it matters, when it counts, that's a whole nother story. I've seen people who just practice and look amazing in practice, and then when the event actually starts or the tournament starts, they're just terrible. And I've done that myself as well. So yeah, no, mainly crossover is it's so cliche, but just like that whole playing what's in front of you or focusing on the next step, like with World's Toughest, you just kind of like concentrating on just getting to the next obstacle, not concentrating on the 24-hour picture, because that'll just intimidate you. So just setting small goals to get to the next obstacle, maybe quicker than you did the lap before, if that makes sense. So you're making it like an improvement on the previous lap. And then with golf, it's like rather than thinking about the result, just concentrating on your technique and your stroke, and the result kind of takes care of itself if you do that well. Yeah, I remember when I was in Vegas competing. Once I got over the whole crap, what am I doing here? And I also realized because everyone was so good, you almost have to do better than you have to do better than you think you can, if that makes sense. So if you put limits on yourself, you'll only achieve so much. So yeah, and it's just a lot of people give you a hard time about playing golf events, especially mini golf events, because they're like, who are you playing? Your granddad. But yeah, when I was paying for thousands of US dollars, I was kind of laughing at all the people who mocked you throughout the years. But yeah, it's a good question. I remember before I went over to Vegas for the golf competition, I actually messaged a guy I know here, or he's moved overseas now. He's a golf coach, and just asked for some tips, like for preparation. And he said, just believe in yourself. You're good, or what did he say? Rely on your Ironman training. Well, I've never done an Ironman, but I knew what he meant. It's just even like little words like that give you the confidence to back yourself and achieve as well. So yeah,
you're making me think that golf, like a mini golf putt, would make a really good obstacle actually. In a race. Your expert opinion, we'll ever see Come into a
Spear
race.
throw out,
This one-
putt golf in.
Have you seen the TV show Holy Moly?
No.
Yes, that's the Aussie one.
Yeah. So it's basically it basically combines obstacle sports with putting. So
Yep.
it's like I'm born for this. Basically, it's made for TV though. So it's basically you have these specially made golf holes with obstacles, and basically if you don't make the putt, you have to go and do an obstacle, and it adds a shot onto your score. But if you complete the obstacle, it doesn't add a shot. But if you fail the obstacle, you're okay. I've actually met through a few other like online golf events since lockdown. Got to know some of the guys in the States who have competed, and the Aussie did a season last year. They were actually filming it in March in LA last year. They went up to LA, those that got selected, and then COVID hit, so they had to come back to Aussie and then do 2 weeks quarantine, like probably some of the first people to do the quarantine, and then they finished the filming in Brisbane or somewhere in Queensland, like about September last year, and then it was on TV this year, I think. So yeah, I knew a few of the guys involved in that, and they're all sworn to, like any TV show that's filmed months in advance, all sworn to secrecy. And apparently they're supposed to be doing a season 2, so I'm kind of keeping an eye out and keeping some leave in the bank in case that comes out, and apply for that. Because originally it was the Aussie season was open to Kiwis, and then like a few weeks later it got closed to just Aussie residents. So maybe they're intimidated. I don't know. So yeah.
Yes.
But if that happens again, man, I will be applying for that for sure. And it doesn't necessarily like it doesn't. Oh, I don't know. I watched a bit of it. It's like it's made for TV. That's the first thing I'll say. And not the best putter will be the champion, and not the best obstacle racer would be the champion as well. So.
Well, I knew one of the women from the Aussie. Yeah, she was working one of the mine sites I worked at.
Okay.
And she did really well. And she admitted she didn't know much about putting golf, but she just put her name down and got selected.
Yeah.
But you're right. That isn't a real good putting thing. You've got to have other skills to get through their course.
Oh, some of the like competitive putters in Aussie got their noses out of joint because it was like people were being described as Aussie's best putters when they some of them can't even putt that well. And then those that do putting competitions were like, hang on, these people are not very good. So nothing like a bit of Facebook comment trolling to ignite difference of opinions. So.
All right. Well, we've got a couple of questions. The first one is there any questions we haven't asked you that you'd like us to, or you thought we would have asked you? You want to comment on?
I actually wrote a whole bunch of notes about my OCR time, and I'm just having a quick look through that. Honestly, I could talk about it for hours, to be honest. So
don't use it all up. We'll get you back on one other time.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. For sure.
That sounds good. You've definitely got on. We'll definitely, especially if you get on the Holy Moly, we'll definitely get you back.
Oh, who knows when that's going to happen though? So. But,
yes. Who knows when we're ever going to get out of getting out of lockdown in Auckland?
I just want to. Oh, don't get me started.
And one other question we ask everyone: if you could have a cup of coffee with any person ever, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Yeah. When you send through, no one like immediately comes to mind. Which I don't know if it's a good thing or not. Who did Liam say? Can you remember?
Arthur Lydiard.
Oh yeah,
the running coach.
Oh yeah, and martial was it Bruce Lee? A martial arts.
Oh, and Bruce Lee.
He had two. He cheated.
Okay.
he came up with two names.
The funny thing is, I may have said Richie McCaw, but I actually met him in 2016 before World's Toughest. I did a week, kind of a few trips. The All Blacks played Ireland the weekend before, and I managed to get a ticket to that through a friend. and she had access to the pre-game function as well. And so I went to that. So this is a week out from World's Toughest, and All Blacks they actually lost that game. First time they've ever lost to Ireland. It was a historic game. And the pre-match function, there's Richie, like Kevin Mialamu, Brian O'Driscoll, Sean Fitzpatrick was the MC, and you had a chance they were just talking about stuff, and you had a chance to get photos and all that. So I went up to get a photo with Richie and Kev, and there was someone else. And during my time in playing rugby in Auckland, I actually played with one of Richie's best mates, who they I think met in university, and they've been on a whole bunch of trips together and all that. And I said to Richie, "Oh, I played rugby with your mate," and named him, and he just said, "Oh, okay." that was it. And so I was kind of like, "Oh, okay." That ends that conversation. But I'm sure he gets that thousands of times. Yeah. And but yeah, apparently, yeah, I won't say any more because he's the greatest rugby player of all time. Maybe if I do this again, I'll get 2. Give me time to think about it.
We will definitely get you back on. It has been really good. I've enjoyed listening to your exploitations in the OCR world.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like there's a lot more. I feel like it's just getting me excited. I hadn't really thought about OCR at all for the last year or so, and just when you messaged to say do this interview, it got me just writing down notes about all the time and trying to remember all the events I've done. It's brought back a lot of good memories.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
I feel like there's lots we could pick your brain about, and you're so precise as well in your notes, like remembering years, and it's good. It makes good stories. And even asking you, sorry, I was going to say, even asking you about the New Zealand Minigolf Federation, and getting your thoughts on that, and lots to talk to you about.
That's the one. So,
if people listening, keep March 19th and 20th free for the 2021 New Zealand Minigolf Open.
I suppose there's something too. Where can people get hold of you? What's the best way of communicating with you?
Oh, me personally, or for Minigolf?
No, for you. Well, for whatever you. You want to...
personally, it's just Matt Ansley on Facebook, or my Instagram is my name, my surname first, then my surname, then my first name, Ansley Matt. Yeah, happy to chat. I've used lockdown to plan a 2022 running tour of New Zealand. Basically, my plan is to spend as many weekends out of Auckland as possible after this lockdown. And the plan is to do some running events in places of New Zealand that I've never been to before as well.
Okay.
So, and I'm actually tying in some mini golf events out of New Zealand with running events. So do the event in the morning and then the mini golf in the afternoon.
So you're looking at like trail runs,
road run, trail runs.
Road runs. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not like fussy. I've got January, February is booked up already, and I just hope everything opens. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of refunds and cancellations and stuff going on. March I've kept free because of mini golf, and then there's a lot of places in the South Island I've never been, and there's actually some very cool events that have only just been going for a year or two, or debuting. Were due to debut this year, but have been postponed to next year. So I've been using the spare time to do a lot of research into all these things, and prioritize where in New Zealand I want to head to as well, and try and avoid the South Island in June and July.
I will give you one word of warning on that. I did the same 2019 for 20. A spreadsheet with it all on, flights, hotels, everything to go to obstacle and trail running events in Australia and all over New Zealand. And I got to 2 of them, and I've got a whole heap of credits. A spreadsheet that I'm now trying to manipulate and change all the dates in because it didn't happen this year. So now move it all to 2022. I might just forget it all and put it in for 23 and worry about it then.
Yeah. Or were they for overseas trips?
I was just Australia, just the east coast of Australia. I was going to go and do.
Right.
because there's just not enough obstacle course races here in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And, so I was going to try and get a few in Victoria and New South Wales and Queensland.
That was one thing. I probably could talk about it next time. But when I started doing the events, people that you know or you post on social media, right, or you talk about it at the gym, and within a year or two, there was like quite a community formed in Auckland of people just doing not so much like the world's toughest, but just a race somewhere in Aussie. And remember our gym, we took there was about 15 to 20 of us that went to one race one year, one of the Spartan races. And then that Spartan I mentioned earlier in 2016, there's about 12 of us went over, but also there was also Greg and Donna and some of the Wairoa crew, Rosalind Ryan and some of her team were there, as well as Kate McEntee from F45 in Auckland. I remember then, that was 5 years ago, thinking, man, we need to coordinate something for New Zealand obstacle race, or people involved in obstacle racing who are Kiwis somehow. And then just didn't really eventuate. But
yeah, well, that's what we're hoping this podcast will do, is get a bit of a community happening. And
yeah, no, like I say, I've been kind of in the wilderness for the last few years, but keen to get back where I can. Just need to get my body back in shape rather than being A shape.
A shape. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks again. It's been really good chatting to you, and we definitely will have you back on again.
Appreciate it. Thanks very much.